Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Welcome to Consider Islam. Live with Kenny Bomer, an affiliate and founder of the Consider This TV network. Any views, actions, or comments made by panelists during this broadcast do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of CTTV network hosts or affiliates. This channel and its affiliates do not claim any right over any of the graphics, images, or songs used in this video that are protected under copyright by other individuals or organizations. All rights are reserved to the respective copyright owners. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. The works on this channel are protected under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, DMCA, of 1998, which amended the existing U.S. copyright law to address important parts of the relationship between copyright and the Internet. Now here is your host, Kenny Bomer.
Assalamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon everyone who's watching. Welcome to Consider Islam. My name is Kenny Bomer, and I do bear witness there's no God other than Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is the final servant and the seal of all prophets. Look at this nonsense. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this article that I come across today about this so-called quote-unquote trans woman, quote-unquote trans woman, who was sexually assaulting female inmates. Now, this is not something that is new to me, because I talk about another case, a couple of different cases in my book, Your Right to Self-Identify, My Right to Disagree, that will be released or launched on September the 5th, inshallah, God willing. So I talk about a couple of different cases like this. But what's interesting about this particular case is that this happened 3 years ago. And what's going on here? These politicians and these lawmakers are still, to this very day, locking up biological men in women's prisons and jails. And some of these people are known sexual predators who are preying upon women and children, and they're locking them up with women. And so I'm going to read through this article and shed light on this, because this is disgusting. This is a horrible situation that we're dealing with in current times, probably the most vile form of evil that the world has ever seen. I don't see, I've never heard of anything more vile and dastardly and devious and just out and out debauchery than this whole idea that a person can choose to be something opposite than what their biology actually proves them to be. And so I'm going to read through this. Again, this happened 3 years ago, but how did it happen 3 years ago, and we're still seeing laws promoting this nonsense to this very day? So what does it say? As a matter of fact, this was published on October the 11th, 2018, written by Nazia Parveen, and you can find this on the website theguardian.com. Okay, so it says transgender prisoner who sexually assaulted inmates jailed for life. Quote unquote Karen White, of course, it's going to give his real name here in a moment, but quote unquote Karen White, 52, admitted sexually assaulting women in female prison and raping 2 other women outside of jail. Okay, so it says a predatory and controlling rapist has been jailed for life after, quote unquote, and here this. So this Guardian website, they are anti-transgender stuff. And listen, let me clarify. Um, this is not an attack on any particular group of people. This is me addressing this ideology, this false ideology, this evil ideology, and nothing more. So I'm not promoting any type of violence or discrimination or injustice or oppression against any individual or group of people. And so some things that I say, just remember that as we proceed. But what's interesting is this website, who does expose these types of things, still is using the word she in describing this man. This picture that you see on the screen, this is a man. It's going to give his name here in a moment as we read through the article. But what does it say? A predatory and controlling rapist has been jailed for life after, quote unquote, she attacked vulnerable women in female prisons. Quote unquote, Karen White, 52, who was described as being a danger to women and children, admitted sexually assaulting women in a female prison and raping another 2 women outside jail. White was transferred to Newhall Prison in Wakefield, West Yorkshire. This happened in the UK somewhere, in Yorkshire, obviously West Yorkshire, on remand last September after being arrested on suspicion of repeatedly stabbing a neighbor. The attacks on fellow prisoners took place between September and October. The 52-year-old, who is currently transitioning, was sentenced yesterday for 2 counts of rape, 2 sexual assaults, and 1 offensive wounding. White has previous convictions for, and I think, consider this. It says, White has previous convictions for indecent assault, indecent exposure, and gross indecency involving children, animal cruelty, and dishonesty. It says the Ministry of Justice has apologized for moving, quote unquote, her to the women's prison, saying that, quote unquote, her previous offending history had not been taken into account. So they just locked this man up with these women and not considering his previous criminal history, where he's obviously sexually assaulting children and so forth, and women. And so it says, prosecutor Chris Dunn described White as an alleged transgender female who has used, quote unquote, her. I don't know why they keep these writers use these pronouns to describe these people. It should clearly say him, because this is obviously a biological male. So why say her instead of him? I'm not going to do it. So anyway, so prosecutor Chris Dunn described White as an alleged transgender female who has used, quote unquote, her transgender persona to put, quote unquote, herself in contact with vulnerable persons whom, quote unquote, she could then abuse. The prosecution say that because there is smattering of evidence in this case that the defendant's approach to transition has been less than committed, he said, sentencing White to a minimum of 8 years and a half years, sentencing White to a minimum of 8 years and a half years in prison. That's how it's worded. I don't know why they worded it that way, but it says sentencing White to a minimum of 8.5 years in prison. The judge, Christopher Batty, said, and I quote, "You are a predator and highly manipulative, and in my view, you are a danger. You represent a significant risk of serious harm to children, to women, and to the general public," end of quote. White appeared at Leeds Crown Court. This is this man dressed as a woman here, assaulting children and women, raping them and sexually assaulting them in female prison. Anyway, it says White appeared at Leeds Crown Court via video link from HMP Leeds, a male prison, dressed in a patterned blouse. So he was dressed in a patterned blouse and wearing a blonde wig and using a walking stick. The court was told that since entering the prison system in August, White who was now using a wheelchair on a regular basis, had begun gender reassignment treatment. He probably got put in a wheelchair once he got to the male prison, and they found out what he was up to, and they probably beat him up, I would assume. Um, so it says the court heard that White had a long history of sexual violence and had displayed predatory behavior towards vulnerable adults and children for almost 2 decades. Okay, so a little bit too little, too late here. So they had to wait until after they've already sentenced him and sent him to a female prison. Now he committed these other crimes. He's back in court, and suddenly the court recognizes. It says the court, quote unquote, heard that White had a long history of sexual violence and had displayed predatory behavior towards vulnerable adults and children for almost 2 decades. So this biological man, calling himself Karen White, was sexually abusing children and women for almost 2 decades. It says in 1989, when quote unquote she was known by quote unquote her birth name, Stephen Terence Wood, which is his actual name. His name is Stephen Terence Wood. Quote unquote she was convicted of indecent exposure when quote unquote she deliberately exposed quote unquote herself near a children's playground. The reason I'm saying quote unquote is because I refuse to address these people other than anything that they are. And when writers and so forth, or when people in the media, they use these types of terminology, these pronouns, calling this biological man a she and a her and so forth, then it's almost an endorsement. Whether or not you believe this, you follow these ideologies or promote them or whatever, it's still an endorsement. So we should not give them the benefit of hearing us, hearing this man who's abusing women and children, people like this, giving them the benefit of hearing themselves referred to something other than what their biology proves them to be. So this Stephen Terence Wood is not a female. He is a man, and he should be referred to as a man because his biology proves him to be a man. Our God, our Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, created him to be a man. And if we say something to the contrary, it's like it's endorsing a lie. And it's either vicariously or directly endorsing a falsehood. And we should not do that. Writing, we should not do that. And speaking about these people, we should not do that. Now, listen, again, I'm not saying that we should go out and oppress these people or do any type of injustice, but we should not do an injustice to ourselves by accepting lies and falsehood in place of truth. And the fact of the matter is, this man, Stephen Terence Wood, sexually abusing women and children for almost 2 decades, should be referred to as the man and male he is, and nothing more. So, it says in 1989, when quote unquote she was known by quote unquote her birth name, Stephen Terence Wood, quote unquote she was convicted of indecent exposure when quote unquote she deliberately exposed quote unquote herself near a children's playground. So this pervert was out there pulling out his private parts in front of children at the children's playground. But the court didn't have sense enough to look into his background and sentence him accordingly. Instead, they sent him to a female prison where he could prey on women under the guise of being a woman himself that he'll never be. It says 12 years later, White would go on to indecently assault and commit gross indecency with 2 boys, aged 9 and 12. And it says, quote unquote, she was jailed for 18 months. Only 18 months for sexually abusing a 9-year-old and 12-year-old boy. Excuse me, alhamdulillah. And in 2003, not long after coming out of prison, and while still on license, I guess meaning still um, uh, um, on parole or whatever, quote unquote, she went on to rape a pregnant woman, who was the wife of a friend. This is a vile individual. This is a very perverted individual. He just got out of prison for 18 months for indecency with a 9-year-old boy and a 12-year-old boy. He gets out, and not long after coming out of prison, while still on parole, went on to rape his pregnant friend's wife. His, his friend his friend's pregnant wife. He went on to. It's not funny. He went on to rape his friend's pregnant wife. It says the defendant, who was then known as Stephen Wood, and living in Manchester, had offered to help decorate a flat of the woman who was 2 months pregnant. While there, White secretly spiked her drink with vodka until she passed out and then raped her. The court heard. White was arrested, but no information was given in court as to why, quote unquote, she was not prosecuted at the time. I just can't stand the fact that they're saying she and her and all that. Obviously, talking about this perverted man that did these things, and it's still referring to this individual as a woman. Come on. In a statement to the court, quote unquote, she said, meaning this Stephen Wood, this man, says, and I quote, I have no relationships with anyone. I felt very dirty as a woman. That he actually wasn't a woman. Anyways, I felt very dirty as a woman. I became very depressed. Even now, 15 years on, I still struggle with mental health and suffer horrendous flashbacks. Until 15 years ago, I was a strong woman. Actually, that was the victim of that was saying that. So, excuse me. The victim told the court in a statement that the attack had ruined her life because her husband had not believed her. And in a statement to the court, so excuse me on that. In a statement to the court, she said, I have no relationships with anyone. I felt very dirty as a woman. I became very depressed. Even now, 15 years on, I still struggle with the mental health and suffer horrendous flashbacks. Until 15 years ago, I was a strong woman. So White, this perverted man, was first arrested in August last year, meaning 2017, last year, when, quote unquote, she threatened to, quote unquote, kill her 66-year-old neighbor and repeatedly stabbed him with a steak knife in Methalmroyd, West Yorkshire, if I pronounced that right. While on remand at HMP Newhall, while on remand at HMP Newhall, they kind of worded it strange here. While on remand at HMP Newhall, White began gender realignment, wearing a wig, makeup, and false breasts. The court heard that, quote unquote, she became friendly with another female inmate. But on September 13th last year, while in a queue for medication, quote unquote, she pressed, quote unquote, herself against the victim in a sexual manner. So here they are lined up to get medication, and this perverted man in this female prison there for sexual assault, and actually that particular charge was for stabbing his neighbor. Nevertheless, he'd already been previously convicted on other sexual charges. Now he's in line getting medication and pressing himself up against this female inmate. It says the matter was reported to police and the matter was reported to police and another prison assault came to light. Another inmate told how she was in the prison workshop with White when the defendant was making inappropriate comments. White then grabbed her hand and put it on the defendant's left breast with the words, "Oh, look, they're not real ones." While in Newhall, White, excuse me, they run it together instead of using punctuation right. It says, while in Newhall, should say comma, White wrote a letter to a woman, and it was this letter that sparked an investigation as the woman returned the letter saying that she did not want any further correspondence from White to be sent to her. Prison authorities and police began to investigate, and the woman in her 20s told police that White had violently raped her 5 or 6 times between January and December 2016. So this is a just absolute pervert. Um, Police then also investigated the 2003 rape. While on remand, White freely admitted to probation officers that "quote unquote" she was sexually interested in children and could abuse a child and think. And it says this is what it says. It says, while on remand, White freely admitted to probation officers that "quote unquote" she was sexually interested in children and could abuse a child and "quote unquote" think nothing of it. So this man is telling these probation officers that he could abuse a child and think nothing of it, like it's no big deal. Addressing the defendant, Batty, the judge, said, "quote unquote" you are a predator and highly manipulative, and in my view, you are a danger." End of quote. A prison service spokesman said, and I quote, "We apologize sincerely for the mistakes which were made in the case." And another quote says, "While we work to manage all prisoners, including those who are transgender, sensitively and in line with the law, we are clear that the safety of all prisoners must be our absolute priority." So, so uh, someone's not doing a very good job if they're locking this pervert up with women and doing so based on the fact that he's claiming that he's a woman or he's in the process of transitioning, and they're going to feed his perverted mind and his opportunities by locking him up with female prisoners, with women. I'm sure he had to be jumping for joy. He knew he was going to prison, and he obviously would prefer to go to where the more vulnerable human beings are, which are more than likely women, because women are um, certainly not going to fight back like a man would. Some would, uh, but I mean, it's just crazy. It's preposterous that they would lock not just him, but they're locking these men up who are biological males. They're locking them up in women's prisons like it's nothing. Common sense dictates that human beings are going to be aroused, right? They're going to be aroused in prison. They're going to be aroused outside of prison. But at some point, they're going to be aroused. And this person apparently doesn't care who the individual is or what sex the individual is or what age the individual is. He's wanted to have sex with anyone and everyone. Children, males, females, adults, males, females, it doesn't matter. But they're going to lock him up with women because he's calling himself a woman. So my question to anyone who hears this is, what are we going to do about it? Each and every one of us should be saying, no, we're not going to accept this nonsense anymore. Enough is enough already. No, a little girl can't be trapped inside of a man's body, and no, a little boy can't be trapped inside of a woman's body. No, a person cannot, just because they feel or think a certain way, become, something other than what biology proves them to be. It's impossible. And so, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to stand up and say something against it and stand on the side of truth? And if you're a God conscious person, are you going to stand by our Creator and believe that our Creator makes no mistakes? Even if He creates someone who's blind, or creates someone who's deaf, or someone who's got a physical deformity of some kind, it's a test to humanity. It's a test to the individual, and it's a test to their caretakers or anyone who is around them throughout the course of their lives. Right? There's a reason for it. There's wisdom behind it. So each and every person is made exactly the way Allah intended them to be. And you cannot change the reality of that. So if we're God conscious, are we going to stand up and say, no, we're not going to accept this? Or we're just going to just let it take over? So if you'd like to have a discussion about it, if you'd like to join me on the panel, I'm going to post the link in the chat. Join the panel. Click on the link if you'd like to come and voice your opinion on the issue. All right? Click on that link that I just posted into the chat, and you're welcome to come and voice your opinion. Okay. All right. So if you'd like to come and join me on the panel, feel free to do so. But we've got to we've got to come together and do something against this, about this nonsense. Everyone should be speaking up and saying, no, you're not going to take over and take over the words that we speak, and you're not going to, influence our children to believe that if they feel awkward within themselves, or they feel uncomfortable, or they're shy, or they're whatever, that they might be the opposite sex. They might be transgender. No, you don't listen. We don't have to put up with that nonsense. We have to say something. We have to say something. And so, in saying that, I feel so strongly about this issue that, I wrote a book about it, and the book will be published on September the 5th, inshallah, God willing. And, so if you'd like to help support that in regards to becoming a member of the book launch team, you can do so by sending me an email at info@kennybomber.com. And you can join the book launch team, and you can help promote the book and do some other things. And if you do join the book launch team, I'm actually going to send you a free copy of the book. And I'll give you all the details about that. If you send me an email at info@kennybomber.com, you're going to get a free copy, free paperback copy of the book. You're actually going to get 2 copies of the book, but I'll tell you all about that in the email if, in fact, you do have an interest in this topic and you would like to become a member of the book launch team. So I I see Brother Ace said salam, walaikum salam to you, brother. How are you? So, I don't know. We got to do something about this, man. This it's just getting ridiculous. I seen the other day that a couple of days ago that William Thomas, a.k.a. Leah Thomas, that the NCAA nominated this man as the NCAA 2022 nominated. Now, he didn't win it yet, but nominated him as Woman of the Year. What? Come on. Come on, man. I really don't care what these people do, to be honest. I say I don't care. Actually, I do care, but because it affects society as a whole, so I care, uh, because of that. But if they're keeping it private and they're not trying to promote it to the masses and they're not going into schools and handing out these genderbread person handouts and gender unicorn handouts and teaching children that they just might be transgender if they feel any bit odd about themselves or whatsoever. They feel uncomfortable if they're they're uncomfortable when they're going through puberty and all these things. Whatever their issue is, it could be because they're transgender. They have an eating disorder. They're a little depressed, or they are autistic, or whatever. You might be transgender. Really. So just dealing with, common problems in life that we're being tested by our Creator. Going through just regular everyday's ups and downs and trials and tribulations that human beings go through, and going through adolescence and going through puberty and all that. Everyone's gone through that, and it's an awkward time. But does that mean you're the opposite sex? Of course not. It means you're going through an awkward time in life, and you're going to feel a little different because your body's changing, and you're going to get, females are going to get more attention than they used to get, and so forth, because the physical changes in their body, and then they have to go through the menstrual cycle, and for males, some grow quicker than others. Some, they have a growth spurt early, and so they're big and they feel awkward. Others are small and they're not growing as quick as their classmates, and so they feel awkward about that. And but does that mean you're transgender? No, it doesn't mean that at all. It means you're going through regular bodily, biological changes that occur naturally, that were designed by our Creator. And here we have human beings trying to redesign and try to use human engineering, trying to create these monsters. I mean, really, stuffing this and stuffing that into your body, chopping the perfectly good body parts off to replace it with something else. Come on. Calling yourself whatever you feel like you want to call yourself. Well, prove it. Okay, Mike, you're calling yourself a woman. Well, prove you're a woman. How are you going to prove it? You can't prove it by just saying it. Your feelings don't prove it. How can you prove it? If you're really a woman, then prove it. You can't. It's something you'll never accomplish. So, but how dare someone challenge you on that? If you challenge these people on that, then now you're a transphobe, or you're a bigot, or you're prejudiced. No. I'm a realist, and if we're going to believe in truth, truth is uncompromising. Truth is always the truth. It doesn't change. Truth never changes. Lies and falsehood go through all kinds of different variations. The truth never changes. And our biological design is our truth. Our biological makeup is well defined. It's our truth. And it's not going to change. Now it'll go through natural changes throughout the course of our lives. I mentioned this in the book about the aging process and so forth. There's changes within the DNA that occurs, but the foundation of the DNA never changes. So man may grow old, things start changing within his body naturally by the design of our creator, but that biology itself, the foundation of it doesn't change. It remains the same. That's the truth. But if you say that, you're a bigot. Wait a minute. If you believe in biology, you believe that the biology speaks. It's like a blueprint. It tells the facts. If you believe in those facts, you're the bad guy now. Because the way someone feels or the way someone thinks is more important than what the biology says, what the science says. So I don't know. We've got to come together, and we've got to do something about this nonsense. There should be more discussions taking place. There should be protests. There should be going to lawmakers, going to congressmen, and saying, "Look, we've got to do something about this. We don't want these people going into our schools and having people, men dressed up as drag queens, reading stories at story time to our children." Even if you don't have children, do you want them doing it to your neighbor's children? Why would you? No. There should be petitions going around saying, we don't want these lies being force fed to the masses. It's happening all over the world. It's becoming more and more common. Lies and falsehood are being accepted. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, as a sign before the day of judgment, the man that's speaking the truth will be seen as the man who's a liar, and the man who's telling lies will be perceived as the truthful one. And that's what we're seeing. So we got to do something about it, man. God conscious people, it doesn't matter if you're Muslim, Christian, Jew, if you're a God conscious person, meaning the three Abrahamic faiths in particular, or anyone on the side of truth, even from the scientific standpoint, anyone who is going to stand up for the truth, we have to come together and put aside our differences in regard, for the time being, and be willing to come together and speak truth in the face of this nonsense. So I say again, if you'd like to help in this endeavor, you can join my book launch team for the book Your Right to Self-Identify, My Right to Disagree. Who is Oppressing Whom is the subtitle. And it will be published on September the 5th, 2022. You can join the book launch team. I'm going to give you a free paperback copy of the book for joining the book launch team. I'll tell you how all that comes about if you send me an email at info@kennybulmer.com. info@kennybulmer.com. I will give you join the book launch team. I have a couple of things I'll need you to do as a book launch team member. Nothing too time consuming, but I'll give you a free copy of the book for doing so. Yeah. So, all right. All right. So, yeah, so this guy here, this man, quote unquote, transgender prisoner, I don't even like referring to people as transgender because there's no such thing. To trans, the prefix trans means to change or to switch over to something. But do, do they really know? The biology stays the same. The genes stay the same, down to the smallest cell within the body. A biologist can tell you if the person is male or female with the smallest cell in the body. That's remarkable. That's um, the design of our God, our Creator, and be you Christian, Jew, Muslim, it doesn't matter. If you believe that we have a Creator that created everything perfect, the way He intended it to be, then we have got to speak out against this nonsense. Or you become part of the problem. If you just look away passively and just allow it to take over, guess what? Eventually it's going to start affecting members of your family, your own children, or your nephews and nieces and so forth, or your whoever. There's going to be members of your family that are going to start, because it's popular and trendy, to start calling themselves trans. Matter of fact, if you get patted on the back if you call yourself trans today. If you're just normal, you're not really, no big deal. But boy, let that person come out as trans, and man, look at all the attention they get. Right? Let's get you on the talk show. Let's give you your own talk show. Let's do a reality show about you and your family, about your transition. That's what they've done. I mentioned I've got um, a chapter in the book called The Influencers, and talking about these, not just the trans activists, but the transgender influencers in social media who are leading people astray. They got a voice, and they're they're able to influence uh, hundreds, thousands, sometimes millions of young people, and making them feel, once again, if they're going through whatever issue they're going through in their lives, if they feel like an outcast, or if they just feel uncomfortable, or they don't like how the opposite sex treats them, and all those things, they might just be transgender. That the solution to their problem is to get on puberty blockers, and for men males to start taking estrogen, and for females to start taking testosterone, and completely alter and change what you were created to be. We've got to do something. We've got to do something. All right, so that's all I wanted to say today. I seen this article, and it's just crazy that it's still happening. We have newer. Matter of fact, I mentioned a couple of new cases in the book, and but when I seen this one, it's like, this happened 3 years ago. This pervert, 2 decades of perversity, just attacking women and children and whoever, getting locked up with female in a female prison and preying upon female inmates while calling himself a female. And the court just puts it, this is in the UK, this guy, but it's happening here in the United States as well. It's crazy, man. So I pray that our God, our Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I pray that He saves us from the whisperings of the shaitan that come in many different forms, visually, through our things we hear and see and read and all these things, and social media and television and movies. Um, Evil is everywhere, so we have to ask our God, our Creator, to protect us from the whisperings of the shaitan, the demons, the devil, Iblis, Satan, Beelzebub, whatever you want to call him. I do pray that our God, our Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, protect us from all that nonsense and gives us wisdom to discern, truth from falsehood and to make wise decisions, inshallah. So thank you for watching. I do bear witness there's no God other than Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the final servant, the seal of all prophets. Again, if you'd like to join the book launch team, send me an email at info@kennybulmer.com, and I will reply with some information, and I will also make sure that you get a free paperback copy of the book upon its release, inshallah, God willing. And all you need to do is send me an email at info@kennybulmer.com. So I'll leave it at that. Assalamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, alhamdulillah, rabbil alamin.